welcome to God's 5 Minutes with Pastor Ed Wilson. Reach him at gods5minutes@gmail.com. Now, here's Ed Wilson with God's 5 Minutes.
Hello, friends. Genesis 6, verses 9 and 11 read, "These are the generations of Noah. Noah was a just man and perfect in his generations, and Noah walked with God. The earth also was corrupt before God, and the earth was filled with violence. Noah, that stalwart man of God, stood erect in his generation like a lone pine tree, towering above the blasted ruin of a whole forest that has been infested with weevils. The boring insects of sin and vice had ravaged the whole of the culture in which he lived, reducing what should have been tall, stately trees to rotting, hollow trunks. To be perfect and just means this man's character was well-rounded and sound. He saw clearly, thought soberly, managed his whole life well. He was not a man to be persuaded to lust by something like the internet, had there been one in his time, nor to be carried away with the always raucous political hubbub of his day. By contrast, Noah alone bore that reputation, for it was his fate to live in a time when the whole human race had turned away from God with his holy laws and messages of brotherly love. The biblical chronicler of that distant day used two words to describe the sinfulness of Noah's world: corrupt and violent. Moral corruption is a decay of moral values and principles. One example is when a society changes its language to allow more and more filthy, disgusting, or blasphemous phrases into the public discourse. While another, when people become progressively more promiscuous in relationships, until the culture that once had laws against alienating the affections of a married person from their companion, or that deeply believed in the sanctity of the marital bed, allow all those values to slide down the drain and be replaced by simple selfishness. Moral corruption is what happens when a people love the vices that abuse their bodies: alcohol, drugs, tobacco, and more. So much their most talented poets and musicians write songs about them, glorify them, and their people pass laws permitting them. Besides Noah's generation being corrupt, which is really just another way of saying selfish, it was violent. Bad people are cruel people. When the bonds which knit society to God are relaxed, selfishness soon becomes furious, and selfish people who have no regard for their fellows forcibly seize what they lust after, regardless of others' rights. Sin saps the very foundations of social life, makes men into tigers more destructive to each other than wild beasts. All our modern-day social scientists, our politicians with their grand schemes for introducing more and more programs, all of which call for spending more and more money, are doomed to fail unless they begin at the crass roots. No reformation for society can ever succeed that doesn't start with a reformation of the individual. That's another way of saying that in our day, just as in Noah's, our people need the transforming that only holy religion can bring. While atheism sounds its vain boast of freedom from the fetters believing in God requires, the human spirit of unbelievers is doomed to sink ever more deeply into debauchery and heartlessness. For the principles that make people able to rise to heights of human nobility of soul and spirit all have their bases in religion. Walking with God is truly the way to make us gentle and compassionate. It's instructive to notice that this generation took place before God. All the mad riot of pollution and violence was holding its carnival of lust and blood under the very eye of God, and he said never a word. So is it ever. Like some band of conspirators in a dark corner, bad people do deeds of darkness and imagine themselves unseen, expecting that God has forgotten them because they forgot God. And all the while his eye is fixed on them, and the darkness is light about them. The next verse tells us God looked upon the earth. Here is a solemn warning of the story of Jonah. Though all the world seems to be convinced the Bible itself doesn't matter, it still does. It always will. Friend, let you and I be the Noahs of our age.
You have been listening to God's 5 Minutes with Pastor Ed Wilson. Reach him by email at godsfiveminutes@gmail.com. Tune in next time to hear more encouraging thoughts from God's Word on God's 5 Minutes with Pastor Ed Wilson.